What's up and welcome to another review from Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we're taking a look at the Asus GX531-GS. The pretty amazing thing about this laptop is that last year it was actually a $1999 laptop, and this year it's only $1335. That's almost a $700 discount, and by the time you're watching this video, it might even be lower. I don't know. But this seems like an incredible bang for the buck when most GTX 1070 laptops are about $1,500. And this particular one seems like an especially good bang for the buck one because it has a very premium finish, fit, and feel. This is a very stiff, very thin laptop, one of the thinnest laptops out there at 0.62 inches. So if you're in the market for a thin, powerful, premium gaming laptop that's not going to cost too much money, this is definitely one that you should be taking a look at. Now we're going to be taking a look at all the pros and all the cons of this laptop, and one of the things that I pride myself on at Gizmo Slip Tech is that I put you, the viewer, ahead of any brand of whatever it is. Like if I'm reviewing a laptop, I'm going to tell you the good things about it, I'm going to tell you bad things about it, and if I don't recommend it, I'm just going to say don't buy it. For example, you can see my GP75 Leopard review. I was basically like, don't buy it, it's overpriced, the price is just too much, and this is an example of one of the laptops that you might want to consider buying instead. So that means that even if some laptop brands no longer want to send me their laptops, cough, cough, Razer, cough, cough, cough. Come on, Razer, send me some more laptops. They, haven't gotten a laptop from Razer in about 6 months, and it's really busting my balls right now. Anyway, a little salty there. But I'm not gonna worry about it, because if I want to review a Razer laptop, I'll just have to buy it myself and resell it or something. I don't know, we'll have to see. Just know that if you want to support what I'm doing here on Gizmo Slip Tech, you can hit that subscribe button, you can hit that notification bell, and when you are in the market to buy a gaming laptop, you can also use the Amazon affiliate link if you like buying things from Amazon. All that to say, there's an Amazon link in the video description down below to this laptop, which I did buy this off Amazon, and I'm gonna have to resell it, so there you go. So without further ado, let's get this review started and take a look at the specs of this machine. So this has a 15.6-inch 1080p 144Hz IPS level display. It also has an i7-8750H processor, and this should in theory clock up to 3.9 gigahertz. Now this has a GTX 1070 Max-Q graphics card, and normally I don't recommend buying a Max-Q graphics card, mainly because they're overpriced. But the thing is, this thing's priced about $170 below most GTX 1070 laptops. So I'm just like, okay, we're getting price to performance ratio that's like 2 thumbs up. So I wouldn't really worry about the Max-Q. Just know that in theory, you might be able to find a GTX 1070 laptop out there for about the same price, and it's going to have, just a little bit more performance. But it's not going to be as thin as this laptop, so just keep that in mind. Now this has 16 gigs of 2666 Hz DDR4 RAM, and this is dual channel with 8 gigs soldered on and 8 gigs being removable and upgradable, though you really wouldn't want to do that anyway because you want to maintain that dual channelness. So now this has an NVMe PCIe SSD, has a 512 gig SSD by default, which is a good sized SSD to start with. This is upgradable up to 2 terabytes of hard drive space. We only have the one slot in this guy, and a big part of the reason for that is that it's so thin and light, they didn't really have room to put any additional storage slots in it. Now we have wireless AC Wave 2 and Bluetooth 5.0, and the Wi-Fi worked really well. I've got gigabit internet here at the house, and I was downloading games extremely quickly on my Wi-Fi without needing to plug into a LAN port, so that was really nice. Now it has 2 2-watt speakers. It's only 0.62 inches thick and weighs 4.63 pounds, and that's the claimed weight. Now we actually measured the weight, and it came in at 4.63 pounds and about 6.34 pounds when you add the adapter and cable into it. Last but not least, it has a 50 watt-hour battery. Now for the ports on the left side, we have a headphone mic combo port, 2 USB 2.0 Type A's, a USB-C Gen 1, and the power adapter port. And then on the back, we have a Kensington lock port and a full-size HDMI. And then on the right side, we have a USB-C Gen 2, which is going to have a better throughput, and also a USB Type A 3.1, which is also going to have a lot better throughput. So if you're looking to attach external hard drives and stuff like that, you'll always want to use the ports on the right side because those will have a lot higher speed. Overall, the ports on this laptop are solid, especially for how thin it is. Oftentimes, thin laptops only have 2 USB Type A's. This one has 3, and this one actually has 2 USB Type-Cs, so you're getting 5 USB ports, which is pretty impressive. So the downside here is that you have no mini display port. You can export to an external display using the USB-C on the right, but unfortunately you'll need an adapter unless your monitor has a USB-C monitor cable. And the last thing missing as far as ports go is the lack of a full-size SD card slot. All right, so let's talk about what makes this laptop unique. Well, first of all, it's one of the thinnest and lightest laptops that you can get, period. But especially last year, this is one of the first minimal bezel designs. You can see the bezels on the side are very small. The top bezel is a little bit thicker, but you do have the webcam at the top, which is nice. You're not dealing with a chin cam. Of course, the bezel on the bottom is a little bit larger, like it is on most laptops. Now, the most unique design feature of this laptop is the fact that the ventilation system actually completely opens up on the back rear bottom. This allows for increased airflow, and as you'll see in my benchmarks and stress testing, it actually allowed for some really good temperatures, though that is also because we're being severely power limit throttled, as you'll see. But still very impressed with the temps on this machine. I don't think we ran into any thermal throttling issues on this machine at all. It was purely power limit throttling, which is just kind of a limitation of the hardware. All that to say, let's dive into some benchmarks and just see how well this ventilation system and the internal components can actually play some games and handle some encoding. Here's the compilation of the 6 games that we tested. You can see that all the games played excellently at over 60 frames per second consistently. And you can also see that the performance in a lot of these games is going to vary drastically depending on the settings you set them on. Now we're going to dive into each of these games and see how this laptop stacks up with other similarly priced laptops and some more expensive laptops here in a moment. Next up though, we're going to start off with some synthetic benchmarks. Here's the 3D Mark Firestrike Ultra, and you can see that the GX531 actually crushes the MSI GP Leopard, which is a more expensive laptop. So $3753 from the GX531 compared to the $3238 of the GP75 Leopard. And that has a 1660 Ti, which is going to be another one of those graphics cards that's going to be in a lot of these mid to low priced gaming laptops. Now you can see the performance of a full GTX 1070 here at the very bottom. You've got the Asus GL504S. That is the non-max Q performance of the GTX 1070. So if you're looking for a little bit more bang for the buck, but you're willing to deal with a laptop that's a little bit thicker, that is the laptop that I would recommend to you. Also, the budget is a little bit higher as well in this case. It's a little over $1,500 for that laptop, but you are getting a bit of a performance jump at the same time. Moving on to Time Spy graphics, this is a newer 3D Mark benchmark, and as you can see, the newer graphics cards tend to do just a little bit better in this one compared to the older graphics cards. The interesting thing here is that the GP75 Leopard actually beats out the GX531 in this particular benchmark, so we're kind of trading blows with that GP Leopard, and we'll have to see some real actual gameplay benchmarks to see the actual difference. All right, and then we have this Cinebench R15 multi-score. Now this is an especially impressive score from the GX531-GS because it's outscoring the newer 9750H processors. As a matter of fact, it outscored every single 9750H that I have benchmarked so far, which is really impressive. I mean, that really just goes to show you that the 8750H can keep up with the 9750H as long as the chassis and optimization for the thermal cooling and the processor is not being power limited. So really impressed with the CPU performance for this laptop. Of course, the Alienware is just crushing all these laptop CPUs in this test. I just like keeping the Alienware in there just so that you guys know the power and potential of having a desktop processor in a laptop. Anyway, let's move on. Now, Handbrake 4K render time. This is a new test that I've been started running since the GP75 Leopard, and this is the first time we've been able to compare it, so this is the first time basically for the Handbrake. And you can see that the GX531 does in fact render faster than the 9750H in a real life test. We're looking at about 40 seconds faster. I mean, that's not a huge jump, but considering this one's cheaper, it's thinner, it's lighter, it's still rendering faster, that's impressive. Moving on to Far Cry 5 benchmark, you can see that the GP75 Leopard and the GX531 are actually neck and neck, only 3 FPS apart here. Again, though, the price advantage goes to the GX503. And of course you have that full GTX 1070 at the bottom with the GL504S at 90 FPS. Again, you're gonna get better performance from a full GTX 1070 than you will from the Max-Q variant. Now in the Witcher 3 city run, we got 62 FPS, but once again, we're lagging behind the GP75 Leopard by just a few frames. It's not a big deal. It's still very, very close. The GL504S though, as you can see, it does hit 77 frames per second, and that is a pretty big gap for at least this game between Max-Q and non-Max-Q. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, these are the only 3 laptops I've tested so far with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This is another newer game. And you can see the GX531 actually beats the GP75 Leopard by 1 FPS. And this is on max possible settings. Now, when this laptop is being stress tested, some interesting things happen. First of all, most interesting, I think, is that the temperatures never really get very high. Whether you have it in turbo mode or in balanced mode, the temps are only between 70 and 74 degrees on both the GPU and CPU, which is freaking fantastic. Fantastic, ha! Speaking of fan noise, we got up to 55 decibels on max fan and 52 decibels on balanced mode. So you just get a little bit quieter experience, not a big gap there. Overall, this laptop is not especially noisy. Some of the noisier laptops get above 60 decibels. The 55 is very reasonable, and 52 is definitely very respectable. Now the real question is, does the additional fan affect the performance, and how much throttling is actually happening on this laptop? Now, during this stress test, you can see that the CPU and the GPU do make a big difference whether you're on max fan or regular fan. The max fan average for the GPU was 1454 and the default fan profile was 1392. So that's 62 megahertz difference. You're definitely going to notice that it's going to be a few frames per second on average in a lot of games, like 2 or 3 to 5, depending on how many FPS we're talking. And the downside here as well is that the CPU also throttles pretty significantly. Now, this stress test is a dual heavy load, meaning that we're running the CPU and the GPU at above 90% utilization, which basically no games do that. So this is kind of like a worst case scenario. I did play quite a bit of Far Cry 5 on the laptop, and there was very, very minimal CPU throttling in typical games, and the clock speed on the GPU was also a little bit higher, 1500s, 1600s. So most games you're typically going to not see this level of throttling. Now, and keep in mind, this is all power limit throttling. This is not thermal throttling, as is shown by the fact that we're only getting up to 74 total degrees on the GPU and CPU. So overall package is really, really impressive, especially the CPU performance is extremely impressive. Now, Intel XTU was completely unlocked as far as I could tell. I could raise the power limits for the short and long power limits, and then I could also undervolt it easily within the software. So that is like 2 giant thumbs up for those of you that like to undervolt your laptop and get the most performance from it. Let's talk about the other aspects of the laptop that are really important. The display is overall really good. It's not going to be the best display out there for a gaming laptop. The newer 2019 displays are slightly better, but this was like the best you could get in 2018. The colors are good, the contrast is good. I did notice that there is some backlight bleed along the bottom and along the top, but you're only going to really notice those in really, really dark environments, or like when a movie scene goes like basically full black. That's when you'll really notice it. But other than that, like most bright gameplay, you'll never notice the backlight bleed. And I think that's about average level of backlight bleed anyway for most gaming laptops. Now, as far as battery life goes, this laptop has a 50 watt-hour battery, which is a fairly small battery. But the good thing here is that we do have NVIDIA Optimus, which switches between the Intel graphics card and the NVIDIA graphics card, giving us a substantial battery boost. Now, when I was browsing the web and typing out this review, I was able to get about 3 hours and 15 minutes. Now, if you were to optimize this for maximum battery life, turn the brightness down, turn Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off, I could see you getting about 4 to 4.5 hours of super minimal usage out of the laptop. On the flip side, if you were to run this thing at full tilt, you're looking at about 1 hour and 15 minutes of full tilt usage. Now, the keyboard is positioned forward. I think the main downside here is that when you're using the laptop, normally I would sit with the laptop right about here, but because the keyboard is positioned forward, I have to move back a little bit to fit the laptop comfortably with my arms. Otherwise, you're dealing with like cramped wrist angles, which is not ideal. Another thing to keep in mind with the keyboard is that when you're on a table, you have a good wrist rest and it's very comfortable to type. Like this is like 2 thumbs up when you're on a table, but when it's in your lap, you have nowhere to put your hand. Like if it's hanging off a table or edge, you have nowhere to put your hand, so you're basically kind of like gripping like right here on your palm on the edge of the laptop. to be able to type effectively. And it's something to get used to. Some people might be able to get used to it. I don't think I would personally love typing on this a ton when it's in my lap. On a desk though is great. Now the touchpad is really nice. It did work really well. Overall, I did run into some driver issues where the touchpad will basically like lock up a little bit for a second and become unresponsive. I did try to update the drivers from Asus's website. That didn't do anything, but I'm pretty sure that if I fiddle with it some more, I could get the drivers on the mouse pad to work perfectly fine. It could also be a hardware issue, but I believe it's a driver issue, so I'm still gonna be able to recommend this laptop. Now the trackpad has a really cool mode that's activated by this button right here above the trackpad, and it turns the touchpad into a number pad, which is really useful if you're gonna have to type a bunch of numbers. You also have a dedicated Asus software launch button. You can see this comes right up, and it is a fairly good, very easy to use software. So 2 thumbs up there. You can like set it to silent running mode, balance mode, or turbo mode. You can also adjust the keyboard lighting. And this lighting on this laptop is pretty cool. You've got the keyboard backlight, obviously, and then you have these 2 side lights that come out the left and right side. And the logo on the back is also lit up. And you can customize the lights that come out on the sides as well as the keyboard light to all match, like go red or green or to be a rainbow pattern. The logo on the back, though, I was not able to customize the color. All right, so that brings me to the conclusion for this laptop. Let's wrap all this up. So the major pros for this machine is an excellent price point, good price to performance ratio, superb build quality. This thing is really well built. It feels very solid, and it's extremely thin, very light. You have excellent CPU performance for rendering, doing video tasks. You've got good ports, but you're missing the mini display port, and you're missing a full-size SD card reader. The display is good, but you could, in theory, get a better display in a 2019 notebook. The obvious downsides here is that we're dealing with a Max-Q graphics card here, so you're gonna be sacrificing a little bit of power for having the most portability. And I think this is one of the most attractive Max-Q laptops that I have seen. And I wouldn't have said that a year ago when this thing was priced $2,000. But now that it's $1,335, I say freaking buy this if you're in the market for an ultra thin and light portable gaming laptop. 2 giant thumbs up. That's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and if you liked this video, hit that like button. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the laptop, again, there's a link in the video description down below. I'll see you in the next review. Brandon, out.